Welcome to the Militia Gaming community. I'm Trigger, and this one is all about the 1971 Nissan Skyline, the Hakosuka, and Need for Speed Unbound. Let's go! Real quick before I get into the video, I just want to shout out to Redbane. He's one of the Jaeger Hunter members who actually made this wrap for me. It's awesome. It's very, very clean and it has my logo right there on the back. So thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. And also, if you're looking for any of my builds, you can check out my build spreadsheets on both Need for Speed Heat and Need for Speed Unbound. They're on my website at militiagamingco.com. All right, let's get into it. So this is my first official wrong build video for Need for Speed Unbound, and let me tell you, testing cars in this game is so tedious. For this video, I bought and tested every engine for this Hakosuka in 3 different tiers. That's 24 engines that I purchased. Each engine was tested on either a Corner King race or a street race for tight turning abilities, and then on a speed race for top speed abilities. From that, I can compare all of the engines for a given tier and figure out which one is the best overall in that tier. It's pretty simple once you have enough data, and the stats are decent indicators, but nothing can replace an in-race test. Now, I will admit that there are factors in this game that make it super hard to be really scientific with this. The burst NOS is an example of one of those things. Since the traffic patterns are a bit random, as well as the police spawns along a given race path, you may end up with more or less burst NOS in a single test versus some other test. That being said, I tried to be as consistent as I possibly could with where I was using the NOS. Now you may be wondering, why didn't you just do the tests without NOS? And the answer is because NOS is such a big part of this game's racing mechanics, and each engine benefits differently from using NOS. None of us are going to be racing online or even in solo without using NOS, right? I mean, if you are, then have fun staring at my bumper. Alright, let's get into it. First up is the A-Class build. After buying and building each engine to fit this car into that A box, there's really only 2 engines that are viable. The other options provide way too much power and speed, which forces you to sacrifice too much in the handling department in order to make it worth driving in A. Generally, I was forced to put an inferior gearbox in to drop the car into the right PI rating and use the worst possible suspension and tires, which gave the car a neutral handling profile, and it just drives like crap. So from the 2 engines that were viable, I was originally convinced that the stock engine would be the best because I was dominating with it in online lobbies, but after comparing them head to head, the 276 horsepower 2.6 liter i6 outperformed the stock engine in both tests. On the race called the Drain, which is a street race, it was 3 seconds faster, and on Windy City Sprint, which is a speed race, it was 2 seconds faster. So for this tier, the 276 inline 6 is really the best choice. Now for the rest of the build. I tried to maximize grip and cornering ability without losing too much speed. In A-Class, with this chassis, I could drop the handling down to about 50 to 60% grip, and it would still perform well enough to be viable, which means there was some room for some power upgrades. Here's how I've got it set up with the handling tuning included. Feel free to screenshot this for later use. Let's move on to the A+ build. Once again, not all the engines were viable, but more were than not. Only 3 engines should not be used in this tier, so that gave me 5 to test. The 414 horsepower and the 276 horsepower, the one from the A build, actually performed the best, and there really wasn't a clear-cut winner between these 2, as you can see from this test data. I'm going with the 414 horsepower though, mostly because I like the sound of it, but also because it just feels faster and more responsive to drive. So that being said, here is the full build with that engine. Alright, moving on to the S build, and this is where I think this car belongs. From all the driving I did with this car, all the engines I've tested, it just feels like S is its home. All 8 engines were viable in this tier, including the stock one as well. Here are the test times ranked by the engine's combined time. Notice the standout engine is the 646 horsepower 3.5 liter V6. Its times are multiple seconds ahead of the other engines. So with that engine and the idea to maximize grip, here's the rest of my build. And one last thing before I go. I know you can go to my build spreadsheet whenever you want and check on my builds, but I really appreciate you coming to watch the video because that's how this channel stays alive. It's up to me though to provide you with a reason to watch. So I'd like to talk briefly about this car's handling profile and give you some tips on how to drive it. It's obviously a grip build, so gripping most corners will be advantageous, but know this, although my brake choice was the basic brakes, this thing stops very well and it grips up shortly after braking, so you can usually go deeper into the corners than you would with other grip cars. Also, you can trust that even if you start to drift a little inside the corner, you won't slide out, provided that you recognize it and feather the gas a little bit. Sometimes in that situation, you will be rewarded with a drift NOS and a couple bars of grip NOS after completing that turn, which ends up being a full 3 bars of burst. This happens more in the S tier than the others, but overall, it's nice to see anytime. All right, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if there's anything else I should be doing here. I did avoid the B class and I did avoid the S plus class. It just didn't feel like this car fit in those classes, but you know, there's probably a good build for each of those. It just would have multiplied my workload and I really wanted to get this video out a little bit sooner. So that's why we didn't do a B or an S plus. I've got this in A plus, and S, and I really recommend S for this car. I think it sits very nicely in that class. All right, thank you so much for watching. Shout out to all the Heat 5 members of the channel. I appreciate your support. I will catch you on the next one. Trigger out.